Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today, or I should say tonight, we're going to break down every Week 14 matchup. We got 16 of them bad boys this week. Bye weeks are a thing of the past. We got the fantasy football playoffs to conquer. We've gotten to this point. We are not going home without a championship. I have a very special guest to join me. You guys have heard him every other week this entire season. That is none other than Dwain McFarland. Dwain, happy Week 14, man.
Man, happy Week 14. I'm guessing playoffs are upon pretty much everyone at this point. So excited to jump into it.
Might as well be, man. Absolutely. We got 16 games to break down. We are recording this at 7:15 on a Tuesday night. So hopefully by the time we're done, Dez Bryant will already have a couple touchdowns. Got my lucky Merry Xmas Dez Bryant Christmas sweater on for good luck. Hopefully we will not be disappointed. Dwayne, the last time we did a pod mid-game, A.J. Brown scored a touchdown. So it's good voodoo, man. And that's exactly why I wanted to record with you during the game. But without further ado, let's get to it. First game, Patriots at Rams, Thursday Night Football. Rams opened as 6.5-point favorites, down to 5.5, over-under down from 45.5 to 44.5. Look, this is the week where if you have a Patriots player on your fantasy football team, you do not want to play them because everything is muddled. We thought we had a 2 RB backfield with Damian Harris and James White. That's not the case anymore. Sony Michel jumped back into that. It was already a situation, as we've said in this podcast before, where there's nothing resembling a smash spot because we can't predict the game script that's going to happen for these running backs. Now when we add Sony Michel in there, who's going to be splitting early down work with Damian Harris, even if Damian Harris is the lead, it's already a small pie because Cam Newton is taking all the freaking red zone rush attempts. So it's a situation where we can't trust the running backs. It looked like we could maybe trust Jacoby Myers a couple of weeks ago. Now it's really been between Myers, Bird, and N'Keal Harry, just depending on the week, and a passing attack that we all know doesn't have much of a floor or ceiling. So Rams, number 1 defense this year in yards allowed per play, number 2 in EPA per play against. Look, we've had some fun with Cam in the rushing touchdowns. Even Damian Harris has given us a few weeks. Jacoby Myers had that fun stretch. That was then. This is now. Do not play New England Patriots in this spot. Dwayne, hit me with some Rams goodness.
Yeah, man. It's another week goes by, and we see potentially another breakout, right, situation from a rookie running back. Now, I know you have a special affinity for the young backs that wear the smoke visor, Ian. So 100%. I don't know if you have anything to say before I get started on Cam Akers about his attire, maybe how low he lets his towel hang or how he positions it. I don't know. Like you're the aficionado on all things, to do with, what's the best way to dress as a running back. So I don't know if you want to start there or if you just want me to jump into his utilization.
Only thing I'll add is that the guy has been stunting just a swaggy visor from day one, and we appreciate that because if you can't practice, if you can't look good while you're practicing, how are you going to look good when you play? If you can't look good when you're going to play, how are you going to play good, Dwayne? I don't get it. So with that said, tell me about Cam Akers.
Well, maybe his utilization is finally going to catch up with his swag from how good he looks because – we saw a huge jump for Cam Akers, in this Week 13 game. He jumped from 27% of the snaps the week before all the way up to 63%. He posted a season high in routes, 51%. He handled 68% of the rushing attempts. That's 21 of the carries, Ian. Only one other outing all year. That was Week 6 where Darrell Henderson had 70%, but that was only for like 15 carries. That's the highest this year. And so the other thing that's really positive, for Akers is the Rams trailed in this game. The Rams were within 3 points, which I call close in this game. And then they were also leading in different points of this game. And if you break it down by quarter, by situation, no matter how you slice it, Cam Akers was involved and he was on the field. Now, where he does have a little bit of a stumbling block, that could show up somewhere down the road, if the Rams are just getting smoked. New England, I expect it, a close game. So I don't see that being this week. I don't see a situation where they smoke the Rams. I could see a close game or a game where the Rams lead all game. But if you look at Akers, he doesn't get the long down and distance work and he doesn't get the, 2-minute offense. That's still going to Malcolm Brown. But other than that, man, I think, it's still going to be 3 backs. So you're going to see Darrell Henderson spell Cam Akers, probably, 10 to 20% of the snaps. You're going to see Malcolm Brown out there on 3rd and 4th down, 7+ yards to go. If they get into their 2-minute offense, you're going to still see Malcolm Brown. But what I do want to say is last week, they didn't have any 2-minute offensive snaps. So we don't really know for sure what they want to do with Cam Akers. But if you go look at their no huddle offense, which is often very similar to what you would do in a 2-minute situation because you're running quicker, you got to know you have guys on the field that can think on their feet. They know the playbook. They know the protections. They know all of those things. Cam Akers was out there plenty last week. In fact, he led the team in the 2-minute offense. Malcolm Brown did get out there, but Akers actually outsnapped him. So there's potential, Ian, that we could see Cam Akers take on some of the 2-minute role. And what I like about it is, they've been patient with him. They've waited. What that tells me is there still is, I know we're late in the season, but there still is hope that for some small stretch of the season down here at the end, if you guys have held on to him or if you can get him off the waiver wire or if you're just thinking DFS, I do think there's a chance that Akers could still turn into the every down back. I'm not saying it's likely, but when your coaching staff trusts you in those specific situations, he's already getting all of the inside the 5 snaps over the last 2 weeks, 100%. Both weeks, he had 6 last week. He had 3 of the attempts from inside the 5, so he's already getting those high leverage touches. I'm really excited to see what they do with Cam Akers. Now, this is maybe we should rename like Sean McVay. Like maybe his middle name should be like Hot Hand, like Sean Hot Hand McVay. Maybe we should do that with Shanahan too. Like these two guys, their middle name is like Hot Hand. It could totally blow up in our faces, but you get excited when you see a young, talented player like this. He had a couple of really good runs. They're leaning into him. They could go away from him, but again, I just see encouraging signs. So he's a guy that I'm willing to put in my lineup this week, and I'm going to consider him to be a low-end RB2. But by next week, right, we could really be considering Cam Akers potentially, as an RB1. But I think you're pretty safe putting him in low-end RB2. Set your expectations appropriately. It could be, you could still get RB3 production, but if you're setting your expectations and your sights on low-end RB2, you won't be that disappointed. And I do think there's room for you to get an RB1 performance out of Cam Akers this weekend in a game that should either be tight or the Rams should be leading.
The only thing we need to keep an eye on, everybody, is this shoulder injury a problem? He did not practice on Monday in their estimation. That's not a real practice. I don't know why they would list him on that if it wasn't an actual injury. But hey, he could be full practice. We haven't seen the Tuesday one. We'll see. Just keep an eye on it. Shoulder injuries, rib injuries. I do get concerned with these types of injuries when it comes to, a running back who's going to be taking on a lot of contact. But to your point, all the numbers are adding up. I wanted to be kind of out on this because Darrell Henderson missed a little bit of the first half with a knee injury. But to your point, he was back there in the second half. And any split you want to take from that game, Akers was the lead guy. So I think that low-end RB2 is fair. Just keep an eye on the shoulder injury, everybody. Next matchup, we got the Titans at the Jaguars, inexplicably on a Sunday instead of a Thursday. I don't know what that's about. But Titans 7.5-point favorites. Over-under is at 53. So, look, I just want to point out this Titans offense is enabling 4 high-end fantasy assets. And I'm looking at fantasy points per game here. So not even, full season allotment and everything, but just going off of PPR points per game. Derrick Henry, RB5. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 12. Corey Davis, wide receiver 17. Ryan Tannehill, QB 9. Hell, even Jonnu Smith is the tight end 9, even though that situation's been annoying. He's been missing some games, not exactly putting up consistent production. So look, the only teams, implied to score 30 or more points this week are the Packers versus the Lions, the Seahawks versus the Jets, and the Titans versus the freaking Jaguars, man. I don't know if there's anything that this atrocious Jaguars defense can do to really slow down the Titans in whatever manner they want to spread the ball around. So Adam Humphries, I set the IR with a concussion, which is unfortunate, but this does, open up even more target share to be condensed around A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. Look, right when we got comfortable with Corey Davis being a wide receiver 2, he had that goose egg against the Bears, and it took us a while to get back, on the ship. We've been here, though, and, as we've been calling him an upside wide receiver 3, Corey Davis at this point is a legit low-end wide receiver 2. So always AJB wide receiver 1 season. You don't need me to tell you that. I've told you that enough over the past, 6 months or so. But just realize, it's a situation in this offense. It used to only be Derrick Henry, AJ Brown. Do not count out Tannehill and Corey Davis as legit every week fantasy studs, particularly in a great matchup such as the one they have this week. Dwayne, man, Mike Glennon, tossing that ball around. Not afraid to throw downfield. Right? I kind of love it.
Yeah, I mean, if you heard Glennon interviewed before his first start 2 weeks ago, basically what he said is, look, man, I've been here. I'm just going to let it rip. I'm not going to worry about anything. I'm just going to go out here and fling it. And really, that's what he's doing. And so it's keeping the Jacksonville, passing options viable. You guys know whenever it comes, to the running game, with James Robinson, I don't need to tell you guys that. But just in case you didn't know, over the last couple of weeks, not only has Robinson, been getting his normal workload, which is literally almost every single carry, that the team has to offer. But now he's out there in the 2-minute situations, 100% and 80%. And then the long down and distance, 167%. So Robinson literally is out there for pretty much every viable, play where you could score a fantasy point. Like, he is on the field. So he was already obviously a top end RB1, but I think he's going to finish the season really strong. This is a solid matchup. I think he's a top 4 running back this week, maybe a top 3. You could make the argument, the guy gets his touches every week and he's always efficient. The only other guy I'll mention here for the Jaguars is just don't forget, DJ Chark ran a route on 92% of the routes, had 7 targets last week, 131 air yards. They didn't quite connect. I believe he only caught 2 of those balls. I don't have it up right in front of me. But 29% of those targets came on play action, which is plus 3% versus the rest of the league when you look at wide receivers. So I consider, when you're looking at Chark, he's a low-end wide receiver 2. But, man, he gives you that wide receiver 1 upside, especially with the way that Glennon's willing to just keep pushing the ball down the field. This is a game that, like you said, could be a lot of points scored. Tennessee has been really, they've been a choice matchup like pretty much all season. They haven't really held any offense down, and we know they're going to score their points. So I really like DJ Chark this week. I liked him last week. He didn't quite come through, but I think, solid wide receiver 2, probably going to be a good DFS play. We'll have to see, what ownership is going to look like. But I mean, if he's anywhere around 15%, I'm probably going to take the over versus the field.
Like that call. Definitely a good bounce back spot for Chark. Maybe Chark week. We will see. Next matchup, we got the Vikings at the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay 6.5 point favorites. Game total sitting at 51.5. So I just want to provide some context for Justin Jefferson. We all know he's been one of the best rookie wide receivers of the season. What I think a lot of people maybe don't quite realize is that he has not just been one of the best rookie wide receivers this season. He's been one of the best wide receivers, period, this season. I don't care how old you are. I mean, look, this year, Devontae Adams leads the league in yards per route run. Freaking Justin Jefferson is number 2. He's PFF's 5th highest graded receiver. And look, since 2010, rookies with at least 50 targets, he is number 1 in yards per route run at 2.87. The only other rookie wide receivers over the past decade to average even 2.1 yards per route run, OBJ, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Doug Baldwin, Juju Smith-Schuster, A.J. Green, and Julio Jones. They're all below Jefferson, but those are the only guys even within the same freaking shouting distance, man. It's been incredible what he's done this year. So far, it's been Metcalf, Kelsey, Hill, Diggs, Adams, Hopkins, and Justin Jefferson. Right now, the only 7 guys with over 1,000 receiving yards. So it's been a situation where, sometimes I think we're so focused on the week to week and these efficiency stats, how they're doing fantasy. So sometimes we don't zoom out enough to kind of see how a guy's season might be going, just compared to similar players both this year and in the past. Man, Justin Jefferson cannot say enough good things about this guy. I think he deserves to be, in anyone's top 5, top 10 dynasty rankings for the wide receiver position. He has been as advertised. And I think, regardless of what happens with Kirk Cousins' future and Adam Thielen being there, I think we're going to see Justin Jefferson keep on keeping on for many, many years to come. It's not the most ideal matchup, but come on. I think at this point, the Vikings passing game has earned the benefit of the doubt. Continue to fire up Jefferson and our guy Adam Thielen as borderline wide receiver 1s week in and week out. Dwayne, Tom Brady and company, they had a bye to get right. You look at this end of the season schedule, chance to really end the year hot going into the playoffs. Is this the week we really see this Tampa Bay passing game start to click?
I think it is. I mean, we haven't seen Minnesota really stop anybody, in the passing game. We know Minnesota is capable of scoring points, so most likely Tampa's going to need to score points. And man, I love the zoom out on Jefferson because I do get guilty of that. Like you said, we're so dialed in with utilization and all these different things. Sometimes you look up, you're like, holy crap, that guy's like wide receiver 6, So with Jefferson, the one thing I'll say is while Tampa can be tough, we've seen them slip lately as they've played better competition, and what they do give you is the chance for huge plays because they use so much man coverage. So man coverage can be tough if you're playing against a good corner, but if you're playing against a corner that's having a bad run or gets unlucky, or just has been struggling, man, it's better than playing against, a bad zone team because the quarterback knows he has it pretty much every single play. And we saw what Tyreek Hill did to them. I mean, they just completely destroyed Tampa Bay. So they're coming off a game where they're going to really need their cornerbacks to get right. So I'm with you. I love Justin Jefferson this week. I don't even think it's a bad spot. I'm starting him absolutely everywhere I can. As far as the Bucs go, yeah, I think they do get right. The thing is, if you're thinking about DFS purposes, it's just really tough to decide who you're gonna use, right? If you're gonna use Brady, I think Brady is a top 5 quarterback this week. If you look across the league, you look at the matchups. Some of our better quarterbacks do have some tougher matchups, so I think he's right in that conversation for the top 5. I would probably stack him with two guys, right? And then, you're going to do a bring back with either Jefferson or you're going to do Thielen. So I think it's one of those situations where you've got to use two. If you look at the last 4 weeks, here are the targets: Godwin, 6, 10, 9, Evans, 11, 8, 9, Antonio Brown, 8, 13, 3, Gronk, 3, 6, 7. So there's room for two of these guys to go off. It is the right kind of matchup for that. If you're thinking season long, the way I look at these two, the way I look at all of these guys, I really consider Godwin, Evans, and the wide receiver 2 range each have wide receiver 1 upside though, right? And they have a wide receiver 3 floor. I look at Antonio Brown, he's a wide receiver 3, but he always has wide receiver 1 upside. All it takes is 1 or 2 big plays for him, and we've seen the games where he'll get targeted. Like I just said, week 11, 13 targets, right, for Antonio Brown. You would like to see a little more ADOT, to go with his, a little bit more air yards. He's operating more underneath and intermediate, but he's still a player that looks good, like he can make things happen after the catch. So pretty much all those guys are going to be in your lineups. And then Gronk I just have as a low-end tight end. One this week, he can be a little bit hit or miss, but for the last couple of weeks, 6 and 7 targets is pretty solid.
Yeah, to your point, I do have Brady ranked as my QB4 this week. Vikings in week 14, Falcons in week 15, Lions in week 16, Falcons again in week 17. Expect some fireworks out of Tampa to end this season. Next matchup, we got the Chiefs at the Dolphins. KC sitting at 7.5-point favorites, over under at 49. So this season, in total receiving yards, DK Metcalf is in first, 1,119. Travis Kelce is in second with 1,114. Tyreek Hill is in third with 1,079. If Tyreek had actually had that incredible long touchdown that he caught and didn't even realize that he caught, he would be number 1 in the NFL in receiving yards right now. Kelce would be number 3. There is a legitimate chance that Patrick Mahomes enables the number 1 and number 2 receivers in total receiving yards in the same season. I have not had a chance to go back and see if that's ever been done, but holy freaking crap, that is insane to me. And I think it does kind of beg the question, like, who is quote unquote more important to the Chiefs' offensive success? Obviously Mahomes is number 1, but in terms of Kelce or Hill, who you think the Chiefs would rather have? And personally, I do go with Tyreek. I think having that field stretching threat that, just forces defense to have to really play around him all game, I think that does help open up the intermediate areas of the field more so than Kelce's presence helps open things up for Tyreek. So I saw Tyreek himself tweet that, Kelce should be offensive player of the year. So maybe he actually feels differently. But man, we look at, since these guys teamed up really in 2018 with Mahomes under center among all wide receivers with at least 10 targets thrown, 20 yards downfield, Tyreek is number 1 in overall PFF receiving grades. So a full 442 more receiving yards and 5 more touchdowns on those deep balls than anybody else. Look, Kelce has been so spectacular what we've seen at the tight end position compared to literally anybody else. I mean, he is a number 1 receiver that we call a tight end, but truly Tyreek Hill, one of the most just incredible downfield talents the game has seen really ever, man. So incredible stuff, and looking forward to seeing Patrick Mahomes and company have a good challenge here, because Byron Jones, Xavier Howard, they can certainly hold their own on the outside, but when this passing game is clicking, nobody can slow them down. Maybe we see Clyde Edwards-Helaire get a little more involved. Hopefully he's over this illness thing. I know we got that tricky situation going on, but just realize Mahomes, he's putting pretty much his whole offense through Tyreek and Kelce. The production has been glorious to watch. Dwayne, Tua, I thought played his best game of the year arguably last week.
Yeah, man, I think he's starting to get more comfortable. You can see that he's just a little bit more decisive. And this offense is consolidating, which you often see late in seasons, either because of attrition, right? Because a lot of times at this point, you'll see teams just shut players down, right? If they're just not 100% right. Like we could see that with Galladay, even though he may eventually be right and ready to play, they just may not play him. So you're starting to see some things like that. But with the Dolphins, with Tua and the way they're operating, it's really a two-man show. It's Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki in the passing game. And then you've got the return of Myles Gaskin, right? So if you look at Gaskin last week, I mean, yeah, you had Ahmed was out. You had DeAndre Washington out. You had Matt Breida, but really who cares? He hadn't had a role all season. He was out. But the positive, for, Gaskin is there really weren't any, signs of the coaching staff wanting to hold him back. I mean, he jumped right back in with 70% of the snaps. He handled 72% of the rushing attempts, which was 21. He only had 2 targets, but he was in a route almost 50% of the team drop back. So he really stepped right back into the role that he had before. And I don't know that I really see that changing. I think he could surrender a little bit from an attempt standpoint, but I also think once they have 3 active backs, you're going to see him take over more of the 2-minute drill, more of the long down and distance, which he kind of gave way to last week to Patrick Laird. But I think it was mainly just because they only had 2 guys, right? They needed to spread it around somehow. They didn't want either one of them to get injured. So I think Gaskin is really I think he's a solid low-end RB1 probably the rest of the way, just because of the utilization that he's going to see. Not necessarily an elite talent, but Miami's functional on offense. We've seen that if they get ahead, they're willing to pound him. They use him in the passing game, so I think that's good. If you come back to the passing game, if you look at Gasecki over the last 4 weeks, he's had at least 5 targets every single week. And this last week, he had 10. So his routes and all those underlying metrics have been there all year, right? But everything else had been inconsistent. So I think at this point, you really can consider Gasecki, a low-end tight end 1, still has that tight end 1, high-end tight end 1 upside. And if you look at Devontae Parker, we talked about him enough on here. I mean, he's going to be in that 20 to 30% target range every single week. You prefer Ryan Fitzpatrick with Parker. Things just seem to go better with him than they do with Tua, but it's not because the volume isn't there, with Tua at the helm. So they just need to push the ball down a little bit, push the ball down the field a little bit more. Tua's a little bit more reluctant just to go to him anytime he sees a one-on-one coverage the way Fitzpatrick would, but it's not enough to not think that Devontae Parker, is not valid as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, especially in medium, large size leagues. He pretty much should be in starting lineups across all formats.
Yeah, definitely saw enough from Tua last week to get back on the Devontae Parker train, particularly in a matchup like this, where just don't think the Chiefs really have someone that can match up with him physically on the outside. Next matchup, Broncos at the Panthers, seeing Carolina sitting as 4-point favorites, game total of 47. So, Drew Lock, the first time I think I talked about Drew Lock on this podcast, I described him as AFC West Jameis after a Coke bender, and man, I think it's holding up pretty well here after about, 13, 14, maybe even 15 career starts at this point. So, two of my favorite, just behind, the paywall stats that PFF has are big time throws and turnover worthy plays. We all understand what these are. They just aren't things that are necessarily kept in a box score unless you know your PFF, and we try to, get numbers for everything because that is our job and what we try to do. But if you look at those two metrics, this year we've had 37 QBs have at least 150 dropbacks. Drew Lock is 5th in big time throw rate, behind only Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, and Patrick Mahomes. Number 5, and if you say, oh, you guys' big-time throw metrics are just off, no. Drew Lock has never attempted a freaking pass that he did not believe he could complete. Just so happens that a lot of those passes, he might complete a couple, and then he'll turn over the ball freaking the rest of the time. So in turnover-worthy plays in that same sample, he has the second worst turnover-worthy play rate behind only Mitch Trubisky. So truly, we are seeing just the most roller coaster, good, bad flashes of greatness, and then just horribleness ever since I think we've seen with Jameis Winston, it really in his prime with the 30 for 30 season last year in 2019. So I love what Drew Lock has brought to the table. Is it something that, resembles anything, near Jameis in terms of fantasy production? No, but it's been fun to watch. And because of that, it's just good TV, man. As someone that watches every single game, every single week, I get joy out of seeing that Drew Lock and the Broncos are on next because we see these dips of good and bad. So I don't know if he's going to work out long term, but man, it's been a fun ride and I'm looking forward to more of it. So Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, hey, most of the targets will be on their way. Noah Fant too, but just realize ups and downs. We might see a ceiling, we might see a floor. It's a Drew Lock experience, everybody. Embrace it. Dwayne, Panthers got some COVID stuff going on, but sounds like Christian McCaffrey's back.
Yeah, you get McCaffrey back. Obviously, you're going to insert him in any lineup that you have him in. He helps really everything else around him. Of course, he does take away some of the targets, from some of the other guys. In 2020, where everything seems to be ripped away from us, Ian, we saw the DJ Moore takeover literally happening for like 3 weeks in a row where we had 7 targets, 9 targets. Air yards were 114, 110, 136. I mean, the guy was seeing targets in the end zone. I mean, everything was going for DJ Moore. And then we have this ankle injury. So we'll have to wait and see. From what I've read from a couple of experts, they didn't believe that it was a high ankle, sprain based on the mechanism, the way it looked. But it was a pretty violent lower ankle sprain. The x-rays and everything came back negative. So we'll have to see what happens with Moore from a practice standpoint. But I'm hoping he gets out there and we see a couple of fulls or at least a full by the end of the week, because DJ Moore is a guy that I think he was just starting to hit his stride. I think he and Teddy Bridgewater were just starting to really hit their mojo. Of course, one of those games was with P.J. Walker, former XFL player, who just basically went out there and just showed Teddy how to do it. Look, just fling it to this guy. That's all you got to do. This guy will make good things happen for you, Teddy. You do not have to go underneath for 3 yards every single play. This guy can make things happen. So DJ Moore is a guy I'll definitely be watching. But if he is out, obviously, Robbie Anderson gets a little bit of a tick up, and you're also going to have Curtis Samuel with a tick up. I mean, Samuel's been, he's hard to predict, but he's got a ceiling that he didn't have early in the year, right? Where he can have these 8, 10 target performances. I think that's tougher with McCaffrey in the mix because McCaffrey gets so many looks in the passing game. But when we saw McCaffrey come back before, Samuel was still eating into a little bit of that. He was still seeing a little bit of work out of the backfield. So I see this week, Samuel is a wide receiver 4, type player-ish if you don't have, DJ Moore. If you have DJ Moore in the lineup, and I see, Robbie Anderson as a wide receiver 3. But if you have DJ Moore out, obviously they both move up, in this situation. As far as DJ Moore, if he's playing, as long as he gets a full in, I'll be super excited about him. Sorry, Ian, if I missed anything on COVID, I've been heads down with normal work. So if any of these guys are out and I'm an idiot, then just tell all the listeners now so they don't screw something up.
You're good, man. I believe Curtis is the one that is on the list.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's tough to tell with the list, man, because they get put on and then we don't know if it's a close contact or if they actually have it. So like every other team, everybody continue to, just monitor it and tune into the Friday edition of this podcast. That's when I go over Thursday Night Football and what injuries to monitor ahead of the weekend. So you're good, Dwayne. We're talking about this on Tuesday night. We just want to get some good facts out there. Everyone has plenty of other time to further form their opinions as always. Next matchup, we got the Texans at the Bears. Houston sitting as 1-point favorites. Game total started at 46, down to 44.5. So look, Deshaun Watson, no matter what, people, I understand going to Chicago is not the most ideal matchup, but we are seeing this Bears defense start to slip a little bit. Aaron Rodgers put up 25.6 fantasy points against them 2 weeks ago. Matthew Stafford, 26.1 last week. Those are consecutive games with over 25 points. No opposing QB had cleared even 20 fantasy points against his defense in weeks 1 through 11. So certainly think Deshaun Watson has what it takes to become the third such quarterback. Look, this year, 4 quarterbacks have a PFF passing grade of at least 90. Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, and Deshaun Watson. Do not let the Texans' 4-8 record distract from the reality that Deshaun Watson has still very much been a top 5 real-life quarterback. Was talking about this on the Monday edition of this podcast and had a clip posted on Twitter where, they didn't do me a ton of favors with the tweet. They were saying that I said Watson was the second best QB in the NFL right now. No, I do not think that. I think Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson for most of the year have played better. I put him probably number 4, number 5 this year. The real point I wanted to make was that if we had to start a team over the next 10 years, obviously we're all taking Patrick Mahomes first. I really think if you wanted to consider, a decade in the future, we probably want Deshaun Watson number 2. So he has been that good. And the fact he's done it, man, with Will Fuller losing DeAndre Hopkins, now getting Will Fuller suspended, not having Brandon Cooks for long stretches of a game against a Colts team that was doing really what they wanted at the line of scrimmage. Didn't matter. He was a bad snap away from pretty much single-handedly pulling that one out. So again, it's been a lost season for the Houston Texans, but please, football gods, get Deshaun Watson a real freaking coach and a GM and someone that can set the suit up for success. Do not waste the prime of one of the best quarterbacks we have seen in recent memory. Dwayne, the Bears. We've talked about Montgomery throughout this year, calling him a volume-based RB2. Here we are, week 14. I checked before his podcast. PPR RB11 on the season. Madness.
I know. Isn't that amazing? It's like it blows me away, and it shows like the carousel that we've had at running back, this season, and just, how volatile, the whole thing has been. But here's the thing with Montgomery. While he's definitely been, a volume-based back, I've seen a little bit, and you watch every game. I have gone back and watched Montgomery the week before. I haven't got to go back and watch this week yet, but I did see some of it on Sunday. Man, he's playing different. I think the last time we were on, I joked that, maybe his coaches, had told him in the past that the end zone is on the sideline because he's always moving to the side instead of forward. And really over the last 2 weeks, we've seen him correct that. I mean, maybe he listened to the podcast, Ian. I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe he's probably not a friend of the show after hearing that, but maybe he'll credit us, with helping him get his game on track. But if you look, if you go look at next gen stats, over at NFL.com, you'll see that he was the number 1 ranked running back in rushing yards over expected in week 12. He was the number 11 in week 13. Those are not normally numbers that you see, this particular running back put up. Also, his efficiency, which is how many yards he travels to gain a yard, right? So the larger the number means basically the more yards it takes him to gain a yard, an official yard on the stat sheet. Normally, if you look at him last year, 4.05, that was in the bottom 16. Last week had that down under a 4, and the week before was at a 1.93. So he's just, I think maybe there's some coaching going on here, and he's just decided, fine, screw it. I'm going to be a little bit less east and west. I'm going to be a little more north and south. I'm going to make my moves once I get to the second level but rather than what we had seen in the past, where he's doing all that behind the line of scrimmage. He's spending too much time. It's allowing all the other tacklers to close in and take away his potential angles of escape. And the next thing you know, you got 4 guys around you. It doesn't really matter how good you are. If you've got 4 NFL tacklers around you, pretty much you're screwed with a very, very limited number of, players that can maybe sometimes get out of that type of thing. But for the most part, you're done once that happens. So the thing I'm most excited about, with him is it looks like maybe he's taken his game to a different level, and there's some coaching that's going on. As far as, the volume, it's all there. I mean, 74% and 79% of the routes over the last 2 weeks, that's elite. 73% and 55% of the attempts, the 73% elite. Last week, they got Cordarrelle Patterson involved a little bit at the end of the game, but he still had 16 attempts. He's 100% of the attempts inside the 5, got 93% of the 2-minute work, 100% of the long down and distance work. So it's just another player that's on the field all the time. And the offense is showing, they don't look great, but they're showing a little bit as far as signs of life, right? So hopefully we'll have Allen Robinson back to 100%. He clearly wasn't all the way there. He tweaked his knee at the end of last week, in a Friday practice. You could tell he was a little bit limited. But they seem to be potentially, and again, I'm not saying this is a jog or not, but I think we're seeing the Bears offense maybe make a little bit of a step forward. And obviously, that means Montgomery's a piece of that. So I think before we would have called him just a volume RB2. I think he's at the bottom end of the RB1 conversation now with what we've seen over the last 2 weeks as far as his efficiency.
I think you're right, man. Even if you want to be a hater and say, oh, no, it's just the schedule. He played the Packers and the Lions. Those are 2 of the 3 worst, defenses and PPR points per game allowed to opposing RBs. Well, now he gets a trifecta. He gets the other bottom 3 defense in the Houston Texans. So not a problem we need to worry about in week 14 at a minimum. Next matchup, we got the Cardinals at the Giants. Arizona sitting as 2.5-point favorites. Kind of surprising, but I think we haven't seen really these lines get solidified yet with Daniel Jones' status still in question. So game total sitting at 45. Either way. So Kyler, without his rushing, is pretty much what we are seeing happen to Alvin Kamara without his receiving ability. It's been brutal because, look, last 3 weeks, Murray has just 5 rushes in 3 consecutive games after surpassing that number in all but 1 game in weeks 1 through 10. So if you just take Kyler's only his rushing production compared to other quarterbacks, he's easily in first place. Still, even with him having these, kind of just drier games for the past few weeks. If you look at only his passing production compared to all the other passing production from the quarterbacks, he's 14th. This is still someone that can be a borderline QB1, without his rushing. But my goodness, man, it's not helping matters. It's, we're pretty much taking away Thor's hammer here. Many Thors, many hammer, however you want to call it with Kyler. But, it's truly just at this point in the year, we need to adjust in a hurry because the fantasy playoffs are on the line. And look, man, the Giants, as we saw last week when they pretty much took apart one of the better offenses we've seen this year, and Russell Wilson, the Seahawks, they're not bad. They're not bad at all. And I think if James Bradbury can give even a little bit of problems to DeAndre Hopkins, we're going to see this passing game stall out a little bit. So I have Kyler as my QB10 this week, man. It doesn't feel good. He's someone that I really didn't think we'd be moving out of that overall number 1 spot. He's still running around as fast as ever. Obviously, he can still run fast even with the shoulder injury, but clearly something about his decision-making has changed in terms of the hits he's willing to take. And you could say, hey, we're getting later in the season, like maybe he's going to just say screw it and go for it. That would have happened last week against the Rams, and a massive game for both of those squads. So it's concerning. He's not the same fantasy stud. He's still a QB1, but much more along that borderline, hey, maybe he snaps out of it and comes back. I understand not many teams are going to have Kyler and another high-end quarterback to really choose from, but just realize it's a very real problem. And in this matchup that isn't ideal, we need to adjust accordingly. So Kenyon Drake's been the main beneficiary of this. He's getting the goal line rush attempts. He's another one of these guys along with Montgomery that you kind of look at the overall season production, not quite as bad as we were making out to be earlier in the year. And with Drake also getting those targets, things are working out as well. So I know a lot of people have just been screaming for Chase Edmonds. Edmonds has been a very good receiver, but Kenyon Drake, even coming back from this ankle injury, man, I almost think he's looked better post-injury than he did pre-injury, which I guess is a pretty Kenyon Drake thing to do and just the way 2020's been going, but whatever, we'll take it. Drake can be fired up as a legit upside RB2. Don't get too carried away, but Kyler, I'm just concerned about it, and because of that, we can trust Hopkins. Obviously, he's your weekly top 5 wide receiver, but otherwise, just tough to feel too good about anyone in this offense. It's the wrong time of the year to be trending downwards, but that's the reality we're being dealt right now. Dwayne, we saw Colt McCoy lead a gritty, Jim Rat-inspired-esque performance last. Yeah, no, he was crap, man. But what do you got to say about the Giants?
I mean, how about this NFC East and the Juggernauts knocking off the Steelers and the Seahawks? Wow. What in the hell is going on? I don't know. The Giants, like you said, you're dealing with Colt McCoy now, so it's really tough to get too excited. We'll have to see what happens with Daniel Jones. Not that he's been great, but he at least will push the ball a little bit further down the field, which makes each one of these targets a little more viable. What I do like is you have seen a consolidation across this offense. We talked about that a minute ago with the Dolphins. So really, this comes down now to the number one option is Evan Ingram. The number two option is Sterling Shepard. And then Wayne Gallman continues to get his. So we'll break each one of those down just really quickly. Evan Ingram is easy. You just lock him in. If you've got him every week, unless you own Kelsey or you own King Darren Waller, because he won a lot of people a lot of money this last week. So he deserves to be called King, at least for the week.
Dwayne, oh my God. Des Bryant tested positive for COVID and he's out.
Are you serious?
I wore my sweatshirt for nothing.
Oh, dude. Do we need to stop the show? Do you need a moment?
Wow. All right.
Man.
Oh, this is disappointing. Okay.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm a huge Cowboy fan. I live in Dallas, so I'm always a Des supporter. And hashtag Des caught it.
Hashtag Des caught it. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna give Ian a moment, folks, to regroup. So we'll go back to the Giants, but Evan Ingram pretty much a start every week unless you got one of the top 2-3 options. Sterling Shepard also really in line. I consider him a wide receiver 3 pretty much every week right now. You do want to be careful when they get ahead. Over the last couple of weeks, man, listen to the Giants, man. Listen to these tight end snaps. So you got Evan Ingram out there for 96% and 71%. And then last week, Caden Smith was somehow on the field for 66%, and Levine Toilolo was also on the field for 57%. That's a lot of heavy formation. So obviously they want to protect Colt McCoy. They know Colt McCoy is not very good. I think they also know that Daniel Jones really isn't very good, but he's somewhat better than Colt McCoy. So you do have to watch out for that with Sterling Shepard. If you get into a situation where the Giants are, can play it close to the vest, or they're leading, it's going to hurt Shepard. Here's the good news. That rarely ever happens with the Giants. They're typically behind. It was really a rare scenario. Last week, Sterling Shepard was on the field for only 48% of the snaps, but he was still on a route 81%. That's why routes matter so much more than snaps, folks. If you haven't, I'm sure you've caught on by now, but if you're talking about receivers, honestly, you don't even care about snap counts. If we talk about it, honestly, we're just trying to fill air. You can just call us out on it. All that matters are the routes per drop back, and 81% still pretty solid. You want receivers in the 90% range, but that just shows you when they're going to pass the ball, they want Sterling Shepard on the field. Okay, so that's going to continue to happen. And then Gallman, man, if you look at him over the last 3 weeks, Ian, 18, 24, 16 attempts. Like, this guy is goodness. You look at his targets, 2, 4, didn't get one this last week, 0. Alf Morris, what a bum. What's this guy doing? Coming out here and stealing touchdowns from our amazing Wayne Gallman. But anyway, Gallman, he's an RB2. He does still bring some volatility with him, folks, because he's not out there for long down and distance. He's not out there for the 2-minute offense. Literally, he sees somewhere between 0 and 10%, of those plays. So when the Giants are not in closer games like they have been over the last few weeks, Gallman's, his floor is going to be at risk, each week. His upside, is really all tied to his touchdowns. He's still going to get the carries for the most part inside the 5. Every once in a while, you get a Martian named Alf that comes in and steals some of these. But for the most part, you're going to consider Gallman, a low-end RB2. As far as this week against Arizona, with everything, Ian, you outlined with Kyler, struggling, assuming the Giants are going to take a similar game plan, there's a chance that the Giants keep, this game a little bit closer than what we would have thought like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I think Gallman is startable.
I am with you there, and I've slowly but surely overcoming this just dread.
Man, I don't hear it. I don't hear it in your voice. Your normal enthusiasm. It's gone.
It's gone. Couple punches in the chin, and I'm back, baby. All right, next match. Oh my gosh, of course the Cowboys are next. Cowboys at Bengals. Cowboys 3.5-point favorites. Over under from 43.5 up to 45.5. Going to keep the Cowboys short because again we are recording this about 10 minutes before the game is scheduled to kick off, so we will not know what happens. But I'm not expecting it to look good because now Zach Martin has been removed from the equation. He is now an injured reserve with a calf injury. Look, the reason why the Cowboys offense offense, when they went from Romo to Dak, or they went from, DeMarco Murray to Zeke, or, they lost Prime Dez. The reason they've always been able to overcome these injuries and these changes and player personnel movement is because the one consistency in the offense for really the past, decade, for at least the better half of the last decade, has been just this all-world offensive line. That has been gone throughout most of the season. And we saw that even with Zach Martin there. He wasn't enough to hold it up. Taking away Zach Martin, man, look, the camel's back, already broken and all that, but this is like just throwing a freaking extra 100 pounds of just steel on top of that dead camel already. So this Cowboys offense, since they lost Dak, 10 points versus the Cardinals, 3 versus the football team, 9 versus the Eagles. Actually impressive 19 versus Steelers with Gilbert under center. 31 against a Vikings team that is like just ridiculously, I think they are actually 32nd in pressure rate. Like the one team that cannot pressure the quarterback, the Cowboys did okay against, and then 16 against the football team on Thanksgiving. So we'll see what happens versus the Ravens, man. I'm expecting another sub 20 point performance. And because of that, even in a good matchup, we got a Red Rocket revenge game here against the Bengals. I think Ezekiel Elliott and Amari Cooper are the only even somewhat viable plays. Zeke's going to be, a volume-based RB2. He's pretty much David Montgomery with a bigger name at this point. And Amari Cooper, he is the one guy we have seen kind of rise to the top of Andy Dalton's pecking order. And to Coop's credit, he's still out there running good routes, doing his thing. I think he could, make the most of his situation. The problem is we don't have that same scoring upside because the offensive line, and of course Dalton, being such a big downgrade from Dak. But just realize the reason why these guys and Andy Dalton, even despite having the best skill position talent of his career, can't do it behind this shell of an offensive line. Dwayne, Ryan Finley, Brandon Allen, I don't think it matters, man. Let's keep this one short because I think this Bengals team might be the legit worst team in the league right now.
I think actually we could take everything you just said and we could apply it to the Bengals and we could just insert T. Higgins, insert his name instead of Amari Cooper. He's literally the only asset from a fantasy perspective you're even considering. He's had 9, 5, 7 targets, so that's 24, 19, 27%. He squeaked out a touchdown, the week before last. The guy's a great talent. Talk about a great class of rookie receivers, across the board. So Higgins is it, man. Now Tyler Boyd, great. You may consider him as well, but only as a volume play. Outside of those two guys, you're not touching anybody on the Bengals.
Bengals last 2 weeks, about a kick return touchdown, a garbage time, prevent defense-induced touchdown against the Giants, 74-yard Tyler Boyd screen, and that is it for the scoring. So, yeah, stay the hell away, people. Colts at the Raiders, next matchup. Indy sitting as 2.5-point favorites, over-under at 52. Look, this Colts backfield, it's muddled. And, so is the wide receiver room. But, we got the Raiders this week and the Texans next week. Finally, we can actually take some shots on this unit and I think feel somewhat good about the upside. So on the year, again, we're seeing just some different guys pop up. And I understand there's a difference between using, PPR points per game and just overall season ranks. So I think per game is a better indicator. But still, at some point, these numbers are kind of wild. And Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines are the PPR RB16 and the RB15 on the season. So it hasn't always been consistent, but I really think Jonathan Taylor might finally be giving us that end of the season stretch that we've been hoping for really since, October rolled around. So over the past 2 weeks, Jonathan Taylor has forced as many missed tackles, which is 9, on the ground as he did in weeks 1 through 10 combined. I don't give a shit about that 39-yard swing pass he took to the house where no one was even within 10 yards of him the entire time. Like everyone making over his receiving ability. It's great. He's caught 29 of 30 targets this year, but he's not Nyheim Hines. He's not replacing Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines is always going to be their pass down back. The thing that's staring everyone in the freaking face that they're ignoring is how good Taylor's looked as a rusher. He's actually showing good vision. Like he's doing things that we weren't seeing earlier in the year. We were getting Trent Richardson comps because the dude was running into the back of his, offensive lineman instead of seeing the hole. Multiple runs over the past few weeks where he's actually been, cutting the outside, cutting back inside, making these jump cuts that we see from running backs with great vision. So, hey, maybe it's been because he's had soft matchups, but you look at what's coming up, Raiders and the Texans again, hey, those are soft matchups. So Jonathan Taylor, legit low-end RB2 this week, and he has the potential, if things get going and if they actually give him these 20 touches that we've been hoping he'd get on a more consistent basis, could honestly finish up with an RB1, but he will be a recommended start in this first round of the fantasy football playoffs. As for the wide receivers, I have the same exact attitude towards T.Y. Hilton as I did towards Michael Pittman when everyone's freaking out after his 2 back-to-back big games. It's that, hey, this is crowded. It's going to be inconsistent. We might see some solid performances because Phillip Rivers has been a very efficient passer this year, but we need to wait for a good matchup. This is the good matchups, but just don't freak out. Hilton, Michael Pittman, they're boomer bust wide receiver 3s. They're going to be guys that are probably not going to crack my top 30. They will be inside the top 40. You could do worse than having a receiver facing the Raiders. Just don't get carried away. Since their Week 7 by. Michael Pittman leads the way with 32 targets. Nyheim Hines at 30. T.Y. Hilton's at 28. Zach Pascal's at 26. Trey Burton's at 22. We got 4 more guys between 11 and 18. So Rivers spreads the ball around just as much as anyone. I mean, hey, he's going to put up numbers. It's just hard to figure out who he's going to come to. Most confidence, though, in Jonathan Taylor this week. Dwayne, Derek Carr and company, what a freaking ending. I feel like almost, okay, we can all agree that Greg Williams, call was just absolutely atrocious, but that was a hell of a throw by Derek Carr and in a huge situation. You can say what you want about that play. That Jets cornerback didn't want to give up a touchdown. I feel like we're just all glossing over the fact that, hey, Derek Carr, hell of a throw in a big moment.
Yeah, it was, man. I mean, and overall, really, if you look at Carr, his down the field prowess has improved this year. He's shown that he's willing to push it down the field more. One, that was a big component. We didn't know, does the guy even have the mental makeup to be willing to push it down the field? And that was in question. I think this year we've seen that. And part of that comes back to really the weapons. If you look at Nelson Aguilar, they're using him to stretch the field. Henry Ruggs is still not doing as much as we would want. Of course, it's a terrible year for him because he's in this receiving class with where seemingly we've got, 10 guys that are in the top 36 that are all rookies from a fantasy perspective. And Henry Ruggs isn't one of those. But it was a nice spot for him. He saw an increase in his routes from 65% to 84%. So that's a positive for him. Still nobody you're going to trust in your lineups other than a DFS dart throw. And really, this isn't necessarily the defense to probably even try that against. But again, if it's just a dart throw, you can go ahead. Aguilar, on the other hand, it's interesting. He's had 4, 6, and 11 targets, man, this last week. 11. So earlier in the season, we were seeing these 1 target, 2 targets, 0 targets, 3 targets. He's at least out of that now, right? He's going to be, I think, somewhere between, 5, 6, 7 targets probably each week. He's not out there for as many routes as I would like to see. Normally, you want your receivers 80%, preferably 90% and above. He's been at 74%, 69%, 75%. And we also know that if they do happen to get up, they will just run the rock, right? Everything is based off of, really their ground game. That's how they want to get their offense going. So Aguilar still carries plenty of risk. I don't like him as much in season long, but he's another guy in DFS, that he's probably not going to pop for a lot of people just because it didn't come through in a big way for him last week. But 227 air yards, man, at 20.6 average depth of target. He counted for 45% of the team's air yards. He's out there pretty much if they know they need to pass the ball, and 2-minute offense, long down and distance, he's typically out there. So not quite where we want from a route perspective, but I think he's in that wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3 range, but he's got that boom upside that you're looking for more as a DFS play versus a season long. Season long, you're really only considering him if you're in a really deep league with deep starters. And it's crunch time right now with playoffs. I just can't make the recommendation for him, unless, I would have to see somebody's lineup. But typically, I'm trying to stay away from these guys. The only other thing here is really just to mention that Devonta Booker, is interesting. He did get the attempts. He saw 16 of them, which was 70%, of the team's work. But you thought he'd see a little bit more work in the passing game because he had been used that way before. But they really just gave all that to Jalen Richard. It just shows you that really, Gruden wants to use a committee. He just does. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't care which 2 backs or which 3 backs are active. He's going to force one of them into the role that's open. And so I thought Booker might have a little bit more of a floor protection, if you will, with his receiving ability. Because we did see that last year with DeAndre Washington when he came in for Jacobs. All of a sudden, he was seeing 50% of the routes. But really, we know now it's just because they didn't have anybody else, to have active with him because I think Richard was actually banged up in some of those games. So Booker, I think he's a low-end RB2 if for some reason Jacobs misses again. But that's really it. Renfro is just a guy you can't trust, man. It's all on game script. They're not going to run a lot of 11 personnel if they're in a game where they're close or they're leading. They have to get behind. And in those games, then you've got a viable fantasy option, in Hunter Renfrow. So it's just too hard to predict.
Yeah, we got blast from the past. Theo Riddick also muddling his way into this committee as well. Yeah. Quick limited offer to shout out to everyone. Subscribe to PFF's Elite annual subscription using promo code ACTION to receive a year of Elite subscription access and 1 year, 365 days of Action Pro subscription access for just $199.99. This is a limited time offer that's currently only made available now through the Super Bowl, February 7th, 2020. This offer also only applies to first-time Elite annual subscribers. That's promo code ACTION, everybody. receive a year of Elite subscription access and 1 year of Action Pro subscription as well. $199 code ACTION. Get it done. Next matchup, we got the Jets at the Seahawks. Seahawks opened up as 15-point favorites. That's down 13.5, game total about 47.5. So I do my QB rankings article on Monday, and I spent a good 5 to 6 minutes wondering if Sam Darnold was actually, a streaming candidate this week. My answer is no, he is not. But this did inspire me to make arguably my favorite video I've ever posted on Twitter, which is, Sam Darnold rushing highlight film with Remember the Name by Fort Minor in the background. I'm feeling good about it. That's it though. Yeah, don't play Darnold. Don't play any of these wide receivers. He switched from Perryman and Mims back to Crowder. Who knows who it's going to be next week. Okay, Ty Johnson, first 100-yard rusher in the Adam Gase era. Who knows if Frank Gore's going to be after the concussion protocol. Josh Adams is going to be there, and they're probably going to elevate someone else. So Jets, 32nd ranked scoring offense. And credit to the Seahawks. They got Jamal Adams back about 5 weeks ago. I know he's being lit up in coverage pretty much every time he tries to guard anybody, but 7.5 sacks on the year. We've now seen the Seahawks allow fewer than 300 passing yards in 4 straight games versus the Rams, Cardinals, Eagles, and Giants. No longer just a freaking dream matchup we were quite hoping for from the QB position. I do not think Sam Darnold and company has what it takes to really do what these other passing offenses couldn't. So my answer to which Jet to play this week is no. Dwayne, what's going on with Russell Wilson and company? They got to bounce back here, right?
Yeah, man. I'm hoping so. The Jets are a get right versus anybody, right? We saw it for Herbert, a couple of weeks ago. You already mentioned, last week what Carr was able to do. So obviously, the Seahawks have the weapons. The biggest thing with the Seahawks is really that everyone has just decided that they just don't want to let them take the top off the defense, right? They still do occasionally, but it's not like early in the season where it seemed like, every 10 passes, Russell Wilson was hitting like a 40-yard bomb for a touchdown. Those days are over. Teams have just adjusted to the way they're going to play them. They want to make them have to move the ball down the field more methodically. The Seahawks do continue to throw the ball. It's not like they're trying to ground and pound the ball. Chris Carson, really saw a nice uptick this last week with 81% of the attempts. But think 81% of the attempts in the old Seahawk offense would have been like, 400 carries like in one game. It was only 13 this last week. But Carson did see 6 targets. So, anytime you're in an offense that has the upside like this and you're going to be in the 15 to 20 touch range, you're right there in the cusp of the low-end RB1, conversation for Carson. We will have to see what's going to happen with Rashad Penny. You also had Carlos Hyde playing kind of banged up this last week. I still worry a little bit that this could turn into a 3-back committee, given the fact that they know Chris Carson has had trouble staying healthy in the past. So kind of keeping an eye on that. But I think for this week, we're probably going to be safe for Chris Carson as a low-end RB1. As far as the passing game goes, the biggest thing I've noticed, Ian, I'd be interested in getting your thoughts. So I just talked about, how teams are really forcing them to change their game plan. And it really who it's impacting the most is Tyler Lockett. So if you looked at Tyler Lockett over the first several games of the season, his ADOTs were up in the 8s, 9s, 10s, even games that were popping up over the 10, and he'd get some of those deep slot, crosser type passes, or he would be stretching the seam vertically. And a lot of that's just gone. If you look over the last 3 weeks, his average depth of target is 5.9, 6.5, 6.7. Those are the 3 lowest marks of the year, and they've all come in a row. So it's tough on Lockett. It really puts him now down in the wide receiver 2 instead of the wide receiver 1. I know where he's sitting on a season long. Obviously, you're not going to bench the guy. Things could change. The Jets are obviously a great way to change that. But really right now, what Lockett's going to depend on is he's going to have to do more after the catch. A lot of what was coming his way, on those deep throws, really like I said, these other teams are just really forcing them to do something different. So with Lockett, just treat him more as a wide receiver 2 the rest of the way, especially if you're playing DFS and you're looking at the salary. Don't just continue to think of what you saw earlier in the season. I'm not saying these things couldn't, revert back, because teams fall into this. When they look at film, when a defense studies, they're looking at the last 3 to 4 weeks, right? So as they see that the Seahawks offense has changed, there is a chance, a team could particularly try to say, okay, we're going to stop Tyler Lockett underneath. Well, then you're going to hit Tyler Lockett over the top. I don't think we're going to see that, though, because most teams will remember how well this team was playing early in the season, what an offensive juggernaut they were. And just by taking away those deep passes, teams have just really slowed them down. They're struggling to figure out, how to put up the points that they were before. Obviously we just saw them lose to the Giants. So I think I'm officially worried. About this offense. I have been, for a couple of weeks, but there's no way if I own Russell Wilson, I'm starting him. So it's not really anything. If I'm looking at this week as well, like I haven't done my rankings yet, but he's got to be in my top 5, quarterbacks, given some of the other matchups some of the other guys are facing.
I fully intended to move him out of the top 5 this week. I thought it was
And you
warranted.
couldn't.
I thought it was necessary. I couldn't. He's number 3. They're playing the freaking Jets. I hear you. Everyone has been, keyed in on stopping it. And maybe removing Greg Williams from the picture will just magically lead to a better defense. But man, there's one defense we can face to get the downfield passing game right. It's this one. I would just highlight what you said about Tyler Lockett. It has not been pretty over this past, month and a half. You still need to start him, people. He's not locked in as that wide receiver 1. I get it. If you happen to be blessed with 4 or 5 top 12 wide receivers, okay, maybe he's hitting the bench. It's unfortunate it's gone this way, but yes, with the change in his usage, to your point, okay, this is a situation where we can't actually downgrade it, but still has that boom. And we were having similar conversations about Lockett this time last year after he had a goose egg in week 13. He did end the year fairly strong. Hopefully he can do so again. Next matchup, we got the Packers at the Lions. Green Bay sitting at 7-point favorites. Game total at 55. So I want to highlight just how absurd Davante Adams has been this season, and then we can pretty much get on with our day. We know we're starting Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, and this is just a smash spot of all smash spots versus Detroit Lions. Rodgers is my number 1 quarterback on the week. But looking at Davante, week 1, he's the overall wide receiver 1. Week 2, he gets injured. Week 6, he comes back. He's a wide receiver 30. Good game by Carlton Davis. And that was Rodgers' worst game of the year against Tampa Bay. Since then, here's been his weekly finishes. Wide receiver 2, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 12, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 16, and wide receiver 2 again. Davante Adams is putting up absolutely ridiculous numbers. Nothing is more inevitable, as Danny Kelly from The Ringer likes to call it, than Davante Adams scoring pretty much every single Sunday. So he has had 2 duds this season. Other than that, he has legitimately finished as a top 16 receiver every single week. If you remove the top 12 one from there, then we're talking top 7 or higher. So cannot say enough good things about Davante Adams. I know some people, Rich Rebar from Sharp Football was, I think, the first guy I saw in the entire offseason to put Davante ahead of Michael Thomas. Obviously, Thomas getting injured and Drew Brees, not being there for him now has changed that. But truly, people, in fantasy football, we want to chase volume. And if you look back in August around all the receivers in the league, Davante Adams was someone that we were preaching on this podcast that, hey, he could have a target total when it's all said and done starting with the 2. So unfortunately, Davante's own, injuries have limited his overall just galaxy ceiling, but he's still making the most of it down the stretch, and he should continue to do so in the fantasy football playoffs. So Rodgers, Adams, Jones, even Robert Tonyan, we're feeling good about these guys this week because the Lions don't think they can slow down anybody. 55-point game total. That is up there. Expecting plenty of points in this one. Dwayne, inspiring kind of performance from Stafford and company last week. Obviously the Mitch Trubisky fumble inside his own 10-yard line helped, but hey, a win is a win is a win. Post-Patricia era. Let's go.
Yeah, man, it really did surprise me. I mean, doing that and doing it against the Bears, which you touched on earlier, that's 2 different teams that have touched them up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, I was like, wow, without Galladay, without having DeAndre Swift active, they managed to put up some points, and Stafford had a really good week. So I think the other thing you're seeing here with the Lions is you just have consolidation. Again, that's kind of been a theme, right, that I've talked about with a few different teams. So from a fantasy, standpoint, you just mentioned earlier, we want to chase volume, and that's what you're getting right now from TJ Hawkinson and Marvin Jones. So if you look at the 2 of them, Jones targets over the last 4 weeks, 10, 6, 12, 12. Hawkinson over the last 3 weeks, 6, 7, 9. That's 25, 18, 25%. He's on the field for plenty of the routes. Really, the offense is funneling through them. Yeah, Danny Amendola will sneak in here or there. You got, Mohamed Sanu sneaking in here or there, but really the offense is running through these 2 guys. We can pause for a moment. Should we light a candle for DeAndre Swift? We're dying to see DeAndre Swift, but the main thing is we just need that guy to get healthy and be well. Hopefully that, this illness and some of the things he's dealing with isn't like lingering effects, from a concussion. You saw the comments from Adrian Peterson last week that, well, Swift doesn't really have, like the same energy to him, since he's had the concussion. So you're really just hoping that the guy gets healthy. But if he does happen to get in the lineup, last week we got a little bit, of a warning, before the game that if he was in, it was really going to be more of a package like what we had seen early in the year, which is really kind of like the 3rd guy rotating through for specific situations, mostly long down and distance and 2-minute offense, which, you can do worse than that if you're in a PPR league. That could still come through for you, but it's not something that you want to count on. So we're just going to have to pay attention to the news. If we see full practices all week long, and then we hear that, he's going to resume where he was at, that would be great. But I don't know that the coaching staff is going to come out and tell us that. So I'm going to treat DeAndre Swift as a low-end RB2 if he gets full practices in for all week. But realizing he does have that RB1 upside, but he still has that RB3, floor. So just set your expectations, appropriately. Hopefully he is healthy. He comes out, just rips it up like what we saw, which we saw him starting to do in his limited role, and he was set to really take over. We were all super excited about it. So just like I said, just set your expectations, especially if it's in a situation where you're trying to make sure you advance to the next round of your playoffs. Don't do anything super cute with DeAndre Swift. You got a tough call and you want to put him in? Great. Just don't do something dumb, right? Don't put him in over, somebody that you think is a stud just because their matchup is like so. Just be careful with things like that.
Well, Dwayne, I tried to light a candle, and then I looked back, and it had already gone out. So if that doesn't tell you all you need to know about DeAndre Swift this week, I don't know what will. Next matchup, we got the Falcons at the Chargers. Open as a pick'em. Now we got the Falcons as 2.5-point favorites. Game total started at 48.5 up to 49.5. I wanted to look at Julio because he looked great last week, but he's been banged up, and I just wanted to see if he's kind of fallen off this year as a whole. Again, looking at some big picture stuff more than usual this week. And the answer is not really. He's still one of the game's elite wide receivers. Compared to his former self, though, we are seeing a little bit of a drop-off. He's at 2.46 yards per route run this year. That's better than what we saw in 2019. But look, he did not finish under 2.6 from 2013 to 2018. It's truly like Jones. Nobody was touching this guy for the better part of a half decade in there, just in terms of his per route efficiency. Now he's still awesome. He's just not quite that same world beater that we saw. I mean, it's 84.9 PFF grade, lowest mark since 2013. So look, next year will be his 11th year in the league. He's turning 32 in January. I would just say, you look at these wide receivers that have managed to post 1,000-yard seasons in their 11th season or beyond since 2010. Andre Johnson has last huge year in year 11. Steve Smith, last great year was in year 11 with rookie Cam. Reggie Wayne got to year 12 before his drop-off. 2019 was Julian Edelman's 11th season. Anquan Bolden's last great year, was pretty much around that time range too. Really only Larry Fitzgerald has just consistently put up big seasons, going from year 11 on in the NFL. So, hey, Julio, he's been an outlier, an exception his entire career. It would make sense if he has another 5-6 years in him, but I don't know, man. I think if you're a dynasty person out there and someone's still willing to treat Julio as this, high-end wide receiver one he's been for the last decade, might be time to sell. The end comes fast with these guys, and we saw with AJ Green. You're a wide receiver one week, and the next week you're freaking priced at 3,300 on DraftKings. So, it's unfortunate. And again, Julio is okay. It's really not that unfortunate because Julio is still playing at a very high level. This is, nothing. You're playing him this week 100%, and I get that. I'm saying long-term future might not be a bad time to try to sell high on Julio Jones if you guys stand out there that wants him. Last point I would make for this week, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, we're not touching his backfield. They're playing Todd Gurley through the pain. We don't know if Ito Smith's going to be out there. Do not touch his backfield, but points will be scored against the Chargers. Since week 4, here have been the point totals against the Chargers: 38, 30, 29, 31, 31, 29, 28, 27, most recently 45 by the Patriots. I know there's a lot of special teams goodness in there. Either way, fantasy-friendly production has come for pretty much everybody facing the Los Angeles Chargers. Do not expect that to end this week. Dwayne, Justin Herbert, that was the floor game last week, and it did not look good.
Yeah, it didn't look good, but I think we're going to get a nice bounce back, right, against the Falcons this week. I think he's going to be, I think he's another guy that's going to be in my top 5 quarterback conversation, getting to play against Atlanta. I do have to say that Eric Eager somewhere, if we were looking at Twitter right now, is probably going absolutely bananas. We just had a 3rd and 24, and we ran a toss play to Ezekiel Elliott. So that's winning football right there. Moo probably has something to say about it as well. So I'm sure those guys are really excited. But yeah, back to the Chargers. Justin Herbert. Look, man. When you're a young quarterback and you go to play against, Bill Belichick, bad things happen, man. Like, the guy knows every trick in the book. He knows how to make everything look the opposite of what they think. And he's 2 or 3 moves ahead, right? Like Bill Belichick, like I just imagine him in some other life, like being like Bobby Fischer, right? He's like this chess player. Like, he already knows the end game before, it even starts. Like, he knows where he wants to be at the very end, and he works backwards from it. And he just like literally pins you into like every bad move that you could possibly make. And especially when you're a young player. And so I just think you just got to kind of take it, right? You just take it and you run with it. Otherwise, Herbert's been great. This is a solid spot for him. He's got solid weapons all around him. You got Keenan Allen. He's got 125 targets already on the season. We've still got several games left to play. He's seen 56 of those targets have been against linebackers or safeties and primary coverage. That's 45%. That's a good way to really help out a young quarterback. Put a guy like Keenan Allen matched up against linebackers and safeties. I would pretty sure that he's going to be open every time that happens. And so that's a big help for a guy like Herbert. I would actually be interested in going back and looking, like, how many of those did he complete, against the Patriots? Is that something they worked to take away from, Justin Herbert, were those types of passes to Keenan Allen? I do see that he got those targets last week. He got 60% of them. but Keenan Allen was only open on 50% of his targets last week, whereas like in previous weeks, he was well over 70% on the season. He's over 65%. So obviously the Patriots did spend a little bit of extra time, putting some extra attention on Keenan Allen. He also saw Stephon Gilmore, at times during the game. So yeah, man, it's a balanced offense. Really Mike Williams, more of a DFS play, but he could still get involved. He had 8 targets last week, 115 air yards. The last 3 weeks, he's got 123, 71, 115 air yards. So he can always pop for you in a DFS tournament style. So if you're going to run Herbert out there, don't be afraid to. Obviously, you're going to use Keenan Allen, but don't be afraid, man. That's a great double up that we haven't seen hit yet very often this season. Ian, that's just it's due, right? It's due to hit that you put Herbert out there and you get the stack of Allen and Williams, and it seems so easy. But it just hasn't been there, and not a lot of people do it, right? And it's in a game where you can have a bring back. You already named it, right? You can use Ridley, you can use Jones, you get creative, you use Hayden Hurst. There's a lot of different ways you could attack this game, and so it's one that I'll probably be using a lot this weekend in DFS.
I like that call a lot. And everyone, make sure you go to pff.com and check out Seth Galina's piece. Went up Monday just about, the title was Bill Belichick was up to his old tricks and stifling Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers offense. Seth always writes awesome pieces and it helps make you smarter. Us fantasy football heads, sometimes it's good to learn about the X's and O's of the game, and Seth always has out great content helping us do that. So make sure you check that out. Also, quick shout out to our sponsor before we get to these last 4 games. All first-time depositors at Monkey Knife Fight that put at least $20 in their account while using promo code PFF will receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's a $40 value for just $20, and you'll get the opportunity to turn that $20 into even more money playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest-growing fantasy sports sites in the USA, and Monkey Knife Fight. Go to Monkey Knife Fight and deposit your $20 with promo code PFF today to receive your free PFF Edge annual subscription. Next matchup, we get the Washington football team at the 49ers, both coming off some Monday night performances. San Fran opened as 4.5-point favorites, that is down to 3.5, 43.5 point game total. Did I write that down wrong? Is San Fran really favored? I could be incorrect. No, I'm not. Wow. I'm almost surprised, man. I think I would take Washington straight up in this one. We'll see. Annoying situation. Antonio Gibson looks like he could be a candidate to miss some time. Freaking sucks. He was starting to not necessarily get freed. We were still seeing a lot of McKissick, but the guy was playing some good ball, and it's unfortunate. But, if he is going to miss time with his toe injury, look, people, J.D. McKissick needs to be fired up as a legit RB2. He's the PPR RB24 on the season already. So, he's been getting fed, as we know, we've been barking about all year, and Gibson not getting those opportunities. McKissick's going to be getting more than ever. So, 39 targets in the slot or out wide for J.D. McKissick. That's 15 more than the next closest running back this year. So they love feeding him these screens, these easy, passes. And Alex Smith is very comfortable with them. Don't be afraid to fire up McKissick with the season on the line. Not the best matchup against the 49ers, I get it, but the nature of McKissick's production is going to be just fine to get in that RB2 range. Quick note, do not play Peyton Barber, even if there's a fire this week. There's been 68 running backs with at least 50 carries this year. Peyton Barber is dead last in yards per carry, yards after contact per rush, and missed tackles forced per carry. I get so tired when I hear these commentators talk like, okay, you got our J.D. McKissicks. Oh, they can catch passes. They're a scat back. And you got your Peyton Barbers. Oh, that's an in-between the tackle grinder. He's that guy. No, he can't do anything. Like, the fact he's even getting touches is insane. Can we just call it for what it is and say this guy is not a good NFL running back and he hasn't shown any signs of being a good NFL running back for the past 2 years? So, I know we want to say nice things about all these guys, and, we really do try, but I don't know how to spin this. I really, truly don't know how to spin this for what the guys put on tape and on the field over the past 2 years. I did see a really nice jump cut from him last year at one point when he was on the Buccaneers. That's all I got, though. So please do not play Peyton Barber under any circumstances. Feel good about McKissick. Feel good about Terry McLaurin in a bounce back. Just for the love of God, do not play Peyton Barber. I will take it as a personal insult if anyone touches Peyton Barber in a freaking fantasy football playoff game. I'm getting mad just thinking about someone doing it. Dwayne, what's going on with Nick Mullins and the 49ers?
I'm just glad you clarified that, like, even in a fire, because that could be the case where I could accidentally do it. Like, I'm like, oh my God, my house is on fire. Let me start Peyton Barber.
There's a lot going on.
Before I leave, the last thing I got to do is put Peyton Barber into my lineup. Oh man, that's awesome. It's a tough matchup anyway, with the 49ers. Yeah, they've lost players, but they're going to take away the thing that they know you want to do. So I agree with you. And if you want somebody that actually does do a good breakdown of Peyton Barber and talks about his positive traits, I would say just get Matt Waldman on your show. And plus, it's always one of those deals where with Matt, like, he talks like probably even more than you do, Ian. So, it could be something where, you could probably kill like 20 minutes really quickly. Matt's awesome.
Matt. Okay.
So Tevin Coleman. Yeah, Tevin Coleman came back this last week, but didn't really get to do anything. He was hardly used, but we do still have, this running back by committee. Like, I don't know if people look at this on YouTube or anything, but you see my bad drawing right there. That's the skull and the crossbones. Just says it's avoid. RBBC is still in full effect. We've got Raheem Mostert back, but it's just not something where we're going to get to see him clearly get, all the attempts. He's going to be right around that 40% mark, 45%. Last week, it was 47%. 2 weeks ago, 47%. This last week, 43%. That equals 16-9. So it just really depends, on the game script. So you're going to see a guy that's going to see anywhere, from probably 8 to 14, 15, 16 touches, but you just don't know when it's going to come. I would guess that this is a game that would stay close. Maybe even the Niners can lead. I know you said you'd probably take, Washington just straight up, in the game, in fact, give them, the odds as the favorite. But I mean, these are two teams that have their own struggles, right? Neither one of them is a complete team, so we'll see what happens. But Mostert's just a guy that, for me, he stays at the bottom end of the RB2. I know we had some hopes that, he could turn into, really that RB1, coming back. But it's just Shanahan's going to continue to mix things up. He's going to have an RB1 week, right? It's going to happen. I just can't tell you when it's going to happen. And he can also easily just give you that RB3 dud kind of week, right, in your playoffs. So I would just be careful, with Raheem Mostert. As far as the receivers go, I think the baseline, right, for Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, as long as George Kittle is out, is wide receiver 3, but both have wide receiver 1 upside every single week. So they're gonna finish either as a wide receiver 1, 2, or 3 in 12 people PPR team, leagues. So you're talking the top 36. I think both of them are going to typically be inside the top 36 as long as George Kittle is absent. I mean, they're one or the other is getting peppered pretty much every week, and they scheme it up, right? They do a lot of things to get him involved in the running game. They do a lot of things to get him involved in the in the screen game. They do a lot to get him involved using play action. So while you don't have a great quarterback, you don't have a great offense, the scheme is still really good. And they're really the last two guys standing right now in the passing game. So I think those are guys that you can pretty much fire up in all formats and find ways to get them in your lineup.
Now, Dwain, only thing, you mentioned that you don't know when Mostert's RB1 week is going to be. I do. It's week 15 against the Cowboys. There we go. We got it then.
Actually, you do know. You're correct.
I do know. We got it then.
You may get 2 RB1 performances out of the 49ers. you might get an RB2 out of Jeff Wilson that week.
I love it. All right, Saints at Eagles next. New Orleans sitting at 7-point favorites. Game total at 44. So Taysom Hill, we've talked a lot on this podcast about the things he's done to Alvin Kamara. Unfortunately, we have Alvin down in that RB1 borderline, if not an RB2 at this point, and that sucks. But, it is a situation where we can be happy about what Taysom Hill is bringing to the table on his own as a fantasy product if Drew Brees does remain out of the picture. So if Brees is able to come back, Michael Thomas is going to get a big bump, be in that wide receiver 1 range, and we're going to see Alvin Kamara get back to being that top 3 back. If not, Taysom Hill, he is my QB5 this week, and I don't feel good about it. You don't feel good about it. It's the reality of the situation, everybody. Over the past 3 weeks, the only players with at least 70 fantasy points, Taysom Hill, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Deshaun Watson. It is purely from rushing production. Over these past 3 weeks, Alvin Kamara has 39 rushes, Latavius has 36, Taysom Hill has 34. It's a freaking 3-headed committee in the Saints run game, and Taysom Hill is getting the majority of the fantasy-friendly goal line touches. So he's getting all the rushing work, man. It's literally insane because over the past 3 weeks, again, this is just his starting sample size. Here are the players with more just fantasy points from purely rushing production. Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Antonio Gibson. Then Taysom freaking Hill. That's the situation we're in. Sean Payton, it's like, if you're playing a Madden Dynasty or NCAA and you have your creative player and you're going so far out of your way to feed this guy like points and touchdowns because you want him to get all the end of season awards. That's what Sean Payton's doing in real life. So they're getting wins, but just realize this is not, the full-fledged great version of the Saints offense that we would hope to see at this point, in these 2 of his last 3 starts, they've had 21, 24 points. Those are 2 of the 3 worst, overall offensive outputs of the season. So we heard Sean Payton talking about Taysom needing to have better ball security. Yeah, bro, you fumbled 3 times and you had 2 interceptions dropped. You absolutely need to work on all that, but he's still going to be out there. And if he is out there, man, it's going to be all that rushing production. So it doesn't feel good, but Taysom Hill, legit upside QB1. What a world we're living in. Dwain, Jalen Hurts.
He does like Michael Thomas. So you got that going.
That's true. We got that going.
He's peppering Thomas, even though they may not be the best targets. Thomas is, he's going to see 8 to 10 targets every week. Man, the Eagles, what a mess. Yeah. It's really just an avoid situation because I don't know how to pick who to start. I would say maybe the only guy that you could start, on this team would be maybe there's two, and it's Dallas Goedert. And if you own Miles Sanders, you're just going to continue starting him as a low-end RB2. He's going to see about half the carries. He's going to be out there for about half the routes. But the offense is just terrible, right? And Jalen Hurts, yeah, he threw a touchdown pass, but his underlyings overall were not good. And Jalen Hurts, I'm sorry, if you guys watched him play in college, he's not a good passing quarterback yet. Like, he had good games, but he also had absolutely terrible games. Now, as a fantasy option, he could be okay because he's going to give you points with his legs. He could score you a rushing touchdown. But what he's going to do for the rest of the offense isn't good. But you know what? It was already terrible anyway. So likely, if you own a bunch of these guys, guess what? You're not even in the playoffs, and you're not listening to this show because you've already given up on fantasy football for the season. So that's okay. But if you're a DFS player, like, I don't even like any of these guys really as a dart, and the problem is they're just rotating them all now, Ian. So you got Alshon Jeffrey out there for, Jeffrey's routes last 2 weeks, 54 and 53%. You got Greg Ward at 66 and 72%. Jalen Reagor at 59 and 63%. Oh, got to get John Hightower on the field. He's a playmaker, 29% and 37%. You got Travis Fulgham, the once high and mighty Travis Fulgham, down to 49% and 44%. Like, literally, if for some reason you are carrying these and you are listening to the show in a season long, literally, you can drop all of them. I don't even care. Like, there's really no point in holding any of them. The only viable option is Miles Sanders, Dallas Goedert. And Goddard took a hit. He had been up in the 90% range on his routes, which is like super duper elite for a tight end. And you got the return of Zach Ertz, who ran a route on 44%. Of the dropbacks, saw 16% of the targets, was actually targeted on 21%, targets per route run. So they were trying to get Zach Ertz a little bit involved. So, Ertz is a guy that if you do own him or you held on to him, just hold another week. Don't put him in the lineup yet, though. We really need to see a week where he's out there at least 60, 70%, of the routes. This is a guy that we were used to seeing have 80, 85% of the routes, and we just don't know if those days are going to return. It could just, at its best, right, it could just end up being a split between he and Goddard because they are running 11 personnel a lot more, and I don't know that they're fully going to go back to 12 because they're trying to get some of these young guys some continued exposure. So we'll have to see what they're going to do. But overall, man, it's really a situation to avoid. And it sucks because it's one of those that early in the season, we were kind of excited about the Eagles, and just everything that can go wrong has gone wrong, from Carson Wentz falling off the face of the earth to all of the offensive line, injuries that started very early on. And then, just honestly underperforming coaching, right? Game planning. It's all been suspect. A lot of problems going on in Philly right now.
Yeah, to your point, maybe in week 15 and 16, Jalen Hurts, if we see what we want to see from a rushing standpoint, this week we can get behind. Other than that, don't need anybody. Miles Sanders, okay, he'll be, in that RB20 range probably, but even he is not a recommended start really this week or even beyond potentially. Two more matchups, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us here. We got the Steelers at the Bills on Sunday Night Football. Pittsburgh is sitting as a 2.5-point favorite, 47.5 point over under. So Deontay Johnson has been, a big topic of discussion because Pittsburgh, they're airing the ball out, and Deontay is someone that needs to be in fantasy lineups because he's just getting peppered targets and he's catching a lot of them, but he's also dropping a lot of them. And I understand that drops. We see very good players at the top of the league in drops. Look, Deontay, league high 10 drops. DK Metcalf's at 9. Stephon Diggs is at 7. Tyler Lockett's at 7. Even Alvin Kamara has 6. Like, plenty of great players over time experience a lot of these drops. I'm just confused exactly where the efficiency comes in, when it's going to come in with Deontay Johnson. I love the way the guy runs with the ball, and we see him, 5.1 yards after the catch per reception. He's number 12. I even looked at, some of the cool tools we can use at PFF. I even compared him, only looking at production that's been 10 yards or shorter or behind the line of scrimmage, because I think a lot of Deontay's balls are being caught at the line. So maybe, his yak was just getting too enhanced because of the nature of his targets. But no, he's still an above average yak guy, regardless of, if you're comparing the same sort of targets to everyone. So he's legit with the ball in his hands. But man, 36th among 64 wide receiver in yards per route run, 59th among 64 in yards per reception. Freaking AJ Green this year is averaging more yards per catch than Deontay Johnson. So you look at, Big Ben's career. He's fed 28 guys at least 50 targets. Deontay ranks 23rd in adjusted yards per attempt, man. Hey, Emmanuel Sanders is underneath him. Like, Deontay Johnson, more efficient than Emmanuel Sanders was with Pittsburgh. Obviously, that guy went on to have a fantastic career. So we'll see what happens. I do think Deontay is good, but man, when you look at the snaps last week, Chase Claypool was the one one wide receiver that wasn't getting enough run, and I cannot live with that, dude. Only Mike Wallace has been more efficient in terms of an adjusted yards per target basis than Chase Claypool with Big Ben since 2004. I think Claypool really has been their only threat downfield. And when you look at what he's done in the red zone, some of the rush attempts and screens, he's just the most dangerous guy with the ball in his hands, period. So, so much this offense continues to be so short with Eric Ebron, Deontay Johnson. We're finally seeing opponents catch on to that. I think Chase Claypool could be the key that could unlock the best version of the Steelers offense. We've seen it earlier in the year. They need to get back to that. Dwayne, Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen. Oh my goodness, he looked great last night.
What a performance. Yeah. Like I was looking earlier today, I want to say he had all three of his receivers were in the top 30, from a PPR standpoint as of, before this game, which I don't think we're going to get much out of. Oh, look, the Cowboys are on the board after a Lamar Jackson pick. So they've got 3 points. The Red Rocket led them to a big 3 there, Ian. Cole Beasley, man. Over the last 3 weeks, right? 27 targets, 13, 3, and 11. That's 29%, 13%, 30%. This is a guy that's just absolutely on fire. They're on the same page right now. Obviously, you've got John Brown out of the lineup. He's probably out for at least another couple of weeks. But then you got Gabriel Davis. Gabe Davis is stepping in. He's out there 97 and 98% of the routes over the last 2 weeks. Not getting peppered with targets. More of those, like we said, are going to Beasley. He's had 3 and 5, but they're pushing the ball down the field. He scored a touchdown against the Niners last night. So Davis is in that wide receiver 4 kind of DFS tournament range. Not somebody I really feel great about. If I'm in the fantasy playoffs trying to keep moving forward, I think he's going to be a bit hit or miss. But Cole Beasley, man, I think he's a play that's just for now, even though you're talking about the Steelers getting to work inside, like I don't see how, Beasley in this particular game doesn't see at least 6-7 targets. So he's a guy that I would consider, because of the matchup, I'd put him more in that wide receiver 3 range than I would the wide receiver 2. But I feel really comfortable with him, in large leagues, medium leagues, even small leagues. I feel comfortable with him right there in that wide receiver 3 range. And what's nice is that what we've seen with Beasley this year that we haven't always seen in the past is that he does have an upside. He has a ceiling that we haven't normally seen, So, I mean, like, if you look at the game last night, like his ADOT was 10.7, 118 air yards. That's something that we haven't always seen out of his game before. And obviously he gets to operate out of the slot. But if you look over the last couple of weeks, with Beasley, last night he had 3 targets over 20 yards, Ian. Like, that's just not a part of the game we've normally seen. And most of them are on these deep crossers. You got Allen rolling out, and he finds Beasley at the end. And with this improved accuracy that, Allen seems to have found, like, just hanging around like pocket change under, a couch cushion that he all of a sudden has. And hey, happy for him. He looks really good. He's playing great. He's able to hit Beasley on some of these things that he couldn't do before. So that's what I would say there. The one thing, man, Zach Moss was really coming on, from a utilization perspective. He had seen 53 and then 60% of the snaps in week 12. We saw it drop all the way to 15% last night. What happened? He had a fumble from inside his own 5-yard line. So he literally just was one. I think it was just a lesson kind of thing, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens. I was getting excited to just see what was going to happen with Moss this week because of that steady growth week after week after week. Maybe he could just finally take over this backfield. Well, he's probably going to have to hit the reset button. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back at more of a split this last week. But Singletary saw 85% of the snaps last week, 72%, of the rushing attempts. He was out there for 100% of the 2-man offense, 100% of the long down and distance. So Singletary, while he looked really good, and if you're hearing people tout him, just remember, it's really when this all started was when Moss fumbled. So I expect to see that come back to something where it's probably more of a split this week, and we'll see if Moss can improve from there.
There will certainly be someone out there just talking about how Singletary was able to take over that backfield without mentioning anything else. That's why you got to, if not, I understand not everyone has time to go watch the games, everybody, but if you don't, just try to, listen to someone that did, because these are the types of small notes that really can make or break your decision-making process. Next game, final game, Monday Night Football. Awesome. Big game, and we finally get some, I'm knocking on wood, looks like tentatively in Cleveland it will not be a game severely impacted by weather. We'll see what happens by the time next Monday gets here. But we got the Ravens at the Browns. Baltimore sitting as a 3-point favorite, game total at 48. Again, the Cowboys-Ravens game is going right now. Lamar Jackson just took off for a 37-yard touchdown, 4th and 2. Classic, inverted veer right up the gut. No Cowboy within him. Last 15 yards. And the big thing that I want to see from the rest of this game, look, Lamar, similar, okay, not quite similar similar to Kyler. But Lamar, you got to realize he still has that rushing production. And before he missed that COVID game, like since their bye, he was putting up like just more rush attempts than just about anybody, quarterbacks, running backs, whoever you want to name it. So Lamar, even if he has disappointed, even if he's not, that overall QB1 world beater, and maybe if you picked him on your fantasy team, you're not sitting in the playoffs, you don't have to worry about this decision. But down the stretch, people, we can trust Lamar as a legit fantasy QB1. He's always been a fantasy QB1. Even this year, he just spoiled us so much in 2019. It hasn't quite been the same. So again, anytime we got these dual threat players, quarterback that can run, running back that can catch, or even a wide receiver, that really gets some rush attempts, they tend to be fantasy football cheat codes. So go to Lamar Jackson. Well, other than that, we need J.K. Dobbins to emerge as the lead guy in this backfield. Right now, looking at the box score, we only had 3 carries. Dobbins, 1 carry went for 18 yards. Gus Edwards went for 7. Ingram went for 3. We've been seeing this all season long. Dobbins has been the best back, and they were seemingly set to free him before the whole COVID thing popped up. So ideally, check out my running back article on Wednesday. I'll get that updated with, all the stat splits from this game. Check out Dwain's utilization report. He's going to have information on it too. Ideally, we're sitting here, this time tomorrow saying, oh man, that was great. That J.K. Dobbins RB1 performance taking over the backfield. I really hope that's what I'm saying right now is true as you're listening to this on Wednesday. Fingers crossed. I hope so. Dwain, Cleveland Browns. This is a big game, man. I'm pumped for them because they've earned it. 9-3, Cleveland? In this economy? Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point. I know we joke about it, but the weather, like the last 3 home games in the Browns, I would be interested in going back and seeing if there were, I'm sure somewhere along the way there has been, like at some point, but 3 games in a row with that kind of wind, like it's just insane. So, while Baker hasn't been great, all season long, there's definitely something to what was going on with the wind, because the way is you look at the opposing quarterbacks and the same thing happened to them as well. But Mayfield, in this last game, 334 yards. He's the quarterback 3 from a fantasy point perspective in week 13. And man, this play action passing game and the pump fakes and all these things, I don't know. You watch it all. So if you saw, I can't remember if it was Peoples-Jones or if it was Higgins that ran the out and up where Baker pumped it on the out.
Peoples-Jones, yeah, that was nasty.
Yeah, dude. By halftime, I want to say like there were 3, Browns receivers that were in the they were in the top 6, like if you were looking at DFS tournaments, because Peoples-Jones had a long touchdown, then Higgins had a long touchdown before halftime, and then Jarvis was just doing Jarvis, right? He was just seeing that steady work, caught a pass threw a pass to Baker Mayfield. But Jarvis has seen 11 and 10 targets over the last 2 weeks. What's crazy about it, man, his snaps, 58%, 61%, 67%. But again, why do we care about snaps as receivers? We don't. Go back to the lesson from earlier. You really care about routes. 83%, and he did drop to 67% in week 12, and I kind of put an alert out in the utilization report. Hey, we got to monitor this. This is not a good thing. But then he was back to 81% this last week. And here's the thing with Jarvis. You got to look at a lot of different things with these guys. With him, if you look at his targets per route run, that's where it gets really interesting, right? So what that means is if you see a higher number on their targets per route run than what their normal target share is, that shows you that they're designing the offense to get the ball to them when they're on the field. Think Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones doesn't get enough of the touches to think he would really be able to be an RB1 based on when you look at his snaps and all those sort of things. But then if you look at how they use him when he's on the field, they really do everything they can to get him the ball in optimal situations. And so really Jarvis Landry seeing some of the same thing. His targets per route are higher than his targets. And if you look at it, he's the first read on 91%, last week. If you look at him from a standpoint of his play action targets, 55% and 40% over the last 2 weeks. When you got to worry about Nick Chubb, you got to worry about Kareem Hunt, you got to worry about an offensive line that's playing really well, that saw some major upgrades this offseason. Stefanski's really got this thing singing. It's just problematic, man. It's just really hard to deal with. And so I think Landry's a wide receiver too the rest of the way forward. I'm not saying he couldn't still give you a dud, but with the target volumes he's seeing in the matchups against linebackers and safeties, a lot of play action. Yeah, he's not like Debo. He's not like Ayuk where he can, get you that yards after the catch really consistently and he's a threat to break it every play. But, he's still pretty athletic. He can get some run after the catch yards. He's just not going to break you that 50, 60 yarder unless somebody takes a really bad angle. But he knows what he's doing. He's a professional. We've seen him be a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 for a long time now in fantasy. So continue to treat him that way. I don't need to tell you guys anything about Nick Chubb. The dude's a beast. Literally, Nick Chubb, He may be my favorite running back in the league at this point. It's just insane what he does. The power that he has, the balance that he has, the vision that he has. He can break the long run. I mean, he really does everything. I was listening to an analyst today say Nick Chubb isn't even really that fast. He doesn't even really have good balance. I'm like, do you watch Nick Chubb? Like, you're not watching Nick Chubb. So, if you've been holding on to Nick Chubb, right, and you're in a season-long, wow, what a welcome sight. Because, you say you squeaked into the playoffs, and now you've got really, even though he has to share carries with Kareem Hunt, I mean, he's going to see the occasional RB2 week, but really, I mean, he's got the number one overall running back upside every week, even though he has to share with Kareem Hunt, just because the offense is so efficient.
Yeah, this might not be the most ideal matchup for them, but you look at what the Browns are going to end with as I'm trying to get the schedule to refresh right now. We got the New York Giants in week 15 and the New York Jets in week 16.
Yeah.
So,
but the Ravens have been pushed around on the ground lately, right? Now, it'll depend. We'll have to see. Is Brandon Williams back? That's a key thing to watch. Is he getting practice? Is he going to be on the field? Actually, I don't even know. We could probably see if he's on the field tonight. Oh, the Cowboys just scored. It looks like it may have been Pollard. But anyway, watch for Brandon Williams. They've been pushed around the last couple of weeks because they've been just weak up the middle. They just haven't really had the beef. But their linebacking core and stuff, they're really built to jump out on teams, and the offense hasn't been able to do that this year. They're built to take away the passing game, right, of the other team. Their team is built on analytics. That's how they handle their draft. So, I mean, they're very smart. But if you can get in a situation where you've got a team that's elite on the ground like the Browns, I'm with you. I would put, Chubb at an RB2 this week, but I'm not scared of him.
No, should not be scared at all. Nick Chubb needs to be in fantasy football starting lineups, all shapes and sizes. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Dwain, awesome stuff, man. Let the people know about the utilization report, one of the best pieces of fantasy and just real football information you can find on the internet.
Yeah, man, just turned it in before the show to our awesome editors over at PFF. So it'll be up either late tonight or sometime tomorrow, but it typically comes out either on Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning. So you guys can check it out. If you like a lot of the stuff I talked about here, I go in depth on multiple other players. Also, you can find me at the Fantasy Football Hustle. Got a podcast that comes out once a week. Do that on Tuesday nights as well. So I've been going a million miles an hour today with Ian, all these conference calls. My voice is literally gone. So you guys, if you just want to hear me like just hanging on by a thread for like another hour, that happens on Tuesday nights, usually around 9 p.m. Central Time.
You are a freaking grinder, man. I love it. Hey, tea with honey. That's the trick, because I've had to cut back the old drinking lifestyle during the season because I stay up after all these games and I got to be somewhat coherent for this podcast. So instead of drinking, beer or sheesh, I go with tea now, man. It's good. It's good for the throat.
Works? Okay. Yeah, I'm a Topo Chico guy personally, but that doesn't necessarily do anything for the throat, so I'm going to have to check that out.
Check it out. All right, and everyone check out Dwain on Twitter at Dwain McFarland. Context matters. Always good stuff coming from him. Check me out too if you want at Ian Hartitz. Why not? Who knows? All right, thank you everybody as always for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. New episodes every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Tune back in the future if you feel like it. Until then, take care, and Des caught it.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel, and if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.